Craziest torture devices ever, Part 38. The Fall Bret, originating in the Czech Republic during medieval times. This was used for execution and torture, sometimes using it to just painfully paralyze you. An early ancestor to France's guillotine, but instead of using a sharp blade, it was fitted with a blunt piece of wood. The wooden edge would rip and chew through flesh and vertebrae, sometimes requiring up to 25 agonizing blows. Fuck that. Craziest torture devices ever, Part 16. The Punishment Collar, used mainly on prisoners during the medieval period. Weighing more than 11 pounds and fitted with needle-like spikes on the inside and out. Fitted so tight that you couldn't lay down, turn your head, chew your food, or even swallow. Fuck that. Craziest torture devices ever, Part 40. The Instep Borer, originating in 15th century Germany. Made of iron and fitted with hinges for foot placement. On the top of the boot was a hand crank, and when it was turned, a steel shank would dig into the instep of your foot. Used for confession, but death was also very common, due to blood loss and infection. Fuck that.
Here's some of the most brutal torture methods in history, Part 3.
Craziest torture devices ever, Part 39. The Kang. Used in ancient China as a form of torture and public humiliation. A large flat wooden board would be bolted to your neck, usually displaying on paper the crimes you committed. The size and weight of the board depended on the severity of your crime. Some weighed up to 200 pounds. This would leave you unable to lie down comfortably or even feed yourself. The victim would typically have to beg someone to feed them. Death via starvation was all too common. Fuck that.
Torture devices used throughout history, PT.2.
House on memories. Take my picture now, shake it till you see it, and when your fantasies become your legacy, promise me a place.
Craziest torture devices ever, Part 37. The Copper Boot. Is it just me or does that sound like an Irish pub? Also referred to as the hot oil boot. As usual, used in Europe during medieval times. They would use the boot in 3 different ways. Filling it with boiling water, filling it with different molten metals, or just beating the shit out of it with a hammer. But you want to know the worst part? Probably wasn't even your shoe size. Fuck that.
Disturbing, terrifying, medieval torture devices. Here we go. This one is disturbing, called the breaking wheel, or otherwise known as the execution wheel or the Catherine wheel. This thing was used during the Middle Ages in Europe and was an extreme form of torture. The subjects were bound to the wheel, and sometimes with a hammer or a club, every bone in their arm and legs were broken. It was made for public execution to watch people die slowly and be tortured. The wheel was made to revolve slowly so that their bones, limbs, and parts of their body just were completely crushed by the end spokes of the wheel. The gaps shown here in this breaking wheel were made so the limbs would get caught in them and break off. Let me know in the comments which torture device you guys would like to hear about next from the medieval times. I appreciate the follow, like, and comments, and throw me a follow on YouTube, link in the bio. Thank you.
Medieval torture device number 25. This device is called the tongue terror. It was mainly used on witches, heretics, or liars and cheaters. The victim's mouth would be forced open, and this device would be used to tear out their tongue. In some cases, the victim would be starved for many days at a time, and then their tongue would be torn off, and then they would be given a very hot, salty soup to eat. So, of course, they would be starving, and they would want to eat that soup, and that would be extremely painful. Finally, the victim might be brutally beaten.
Craziest torture devices ever, part 33. The ducking stool. This one can be traced back to the early 17th century. Used in both Europe and North America. Typically used on disorderly women, dishonest tradesmen, and of course, to identify witches. It was a fairly simple design. Basically an oak chair attached to a wooden beam on a seesaw. Sometimes fitted with wheels like this for easy movement. The chair was also fitted with an iron band so you weren't going anywhere. It would then be placed along a river or pond. The magistrates would dictate how many dunkings the offendant got. As you can imagine, drowning was a typical occurrence. And on that note, fuck that.
When I say wooden horse, you might think of this. But if you were living in medieval times, this is what you would think of. This is the wooden horse or the Spanish donkey. And criminals were punished using this very, very painful torture method. What would happen is they would sit on the wooden horse like this. And the torturers would slowly add weights to both of your legs. So 10 pounds at a time would be getting added to your right and your left leg. And then a few minutes later, they would add 20 pounds and 30 pounds and 40 pounds and so on. Also remember, this edge here is very sharp. And when the weight on your legs got really heavy, it would cut you open from your crotch. Now, if you were lucky, they would kill you right there when that happened. But what they would normally do is they would take you off the wooden horse. And now you gotta live with a huge cut on your crotch. The pain was so intense, you wouldn't even be able to walk. And you would bleed out or you'd get infected and would die within a few days normally. This is truly one of the worst and painful methods of torture that I've ever seen in my entire life. More crazy shit, follow my Instagram.
She's sweet but a psycho, a little bit psycho. At night she's screaming, my mind. Oh, she's hot but a psycho, so left but she's right though. At night she's screaming, my mind. Grab a shotgun, kinda crazy. She's poison but Daisy. And people say run, don't walk away. Yeah, she's sweet but a psycho, a little bit psycho. At night she's screaming, my mind. So someone said, don't drink a pot.
Craziest torture devices ever, part 17. The knee splitter. One of the most common and used torture devices ever during the Spanish Inquisition. Fitted to the front and back of your knee, it would be slowly tightened down until it completely destroyed your kneecap. Not typically fatal, they basically use this as like a nice little warm-up. Fitted with 6 razor-sharp spikes or all the way up to 20 spikes. This was also fitted on arms, elbows, lower legs, anything it could crush, it would. Fuck that.